The smell of rust and old machinery filled the air behind the agricultural domes. Lily Mercer squeezed through a gap in the fence that nobody else seemed to know about. At 10 years old, she had learned every forgotten corner of Terravale Colony. Every place where adults didn't think to look for children who wanted to be alone. Her backpack bounced against her shoulders as she picked her way past broken equipment and empty supply crates. This part of the colony always felt different from the busy streets and crowded community center. Here, nobody asked questions. Nobody wondered why she spent her afternoons wandering instead of playing with other kids. Lily stopped walking when she heard something. A small sound, barely louder than the wind rattling through the metal structures. It sounded like crying, but not human crying. She had lived on Terravale long enough to recognize the voices of different alien species. The Dracnir who lived in the Scales Quarter made deep rumbling sounds when they were upset. This was higher, younger, desperate. She followed the sound around a pile of discarded piping. What she found made her heart squeeze tight in her chest. A baby dragon lay curled against the wall. He was small, much smaller than the Dracnir hatchlings she had seen playing near their communal nests. His scales were pale, almost white like frost on a window. Most dragon children had bright red or golden scales. This one looked like he had been painted in winter colors. He was also covered in injuries. Burns marked his sides in dark patches. Small cuts crossed his snout and legs. One of his wings hung at an odd angle, clearly damaged. When he noticed Lily staring, he tried to scramble away, but he was too weak. He only managed to drag himself a few inches before collapsing again. Lily's stomach turned. Someone had hurt this baby. Hurt him badly. She didn't move closer. Instead, she sat down on the ground about 10 feet away from him. The dragon watched her with silver eyes that held nothing but fear. His breathing came in quick, shallow gasps. She could see his ribs through his thin scales. "Hey," she said softly. "I'm not going to hurt you." The dragon didn't respond. Lily hadn't expected him to. She opened her backpack and pulled out her lunch. Her mother had packed 2 sandwiches today because Lily had mentioned being extra hungry. She unwrapped one and carefully tore off a piece. Then she tossed it gently so it landed halfway between them. The dragon stared at the food. His nostrils flared. Lily could tell he was starving, but fear kept him pressed against the wall. She tore off another piece and ate it herself, showing him it was safe. Then she threw another piece closer to him this time. Minutes passed. Lily sat quietly, occasionally eating a bite herself and tossing pieces of food toward the dragon. She talked to him in a low voice, not really saying anything important. She told him about her day at school, about how the other kids had picked teams for a game and nobody had chosen her. She told him about her parents who worked long shifts at the water processing plant and came home too tired to do much besides eat and sleep. The dragon's breathing slowly calmed. After what felt like forever, he stretched his neck forward and snatched the closest piece of food. He swallowed it so fast he nearly choked. Lily smiled and tossed another piece and another. Each time she threw it a little closer to where she sat. By the time the first sandwich was gone, the dragon had moved 3 feet closer to her. Lily started on the second sandwich, breaking it into smaller pieces. The dragon watched every movement of her hands. When she held out a piece without throwing it, he hesitated for a long time. Then, moving so carefully it broke her heart, he crept forward and took the food from her palm. His snout was rough and warm against her skin. His silver eyes met hers for just a second before he quickly backed away. But it was enough. In that brief moment, Lily saw past the fear. She saw loneliness that matched her own. She stayed with him for hours, long past when she should have gone home. The sun moved across the sky, casting long shadows through the abandoned area. She gave him all her food and then just sat with him, talking quietly about nothing and everything. The dragon listened, his head tilted slightly to one side. As the light began to fade, Lily knew she had to leave. Her parents would worry if she was too late. She stood up slowly, not wanting to scare him. The dragon made a small sound, almost a whimper. He didn't want her to go. "I'll come back tomorrow," Lily promised. "I'll bring more food. And maybe some bandages for those cuts." She didn't know if he understood her words, but something in his eyes changed. Just slightly. Just enough. Lily walked home through the colony streets as the lights began to flicker on. Other families gathered in their homes, visible through windows. She saw Dracnir adults with their healthy, brightly colored hatchlings. She saw human families laughing together at dinner tables. Everyone belonged somewhere with someone except her, and except that small pale dragon hiding behind the agricultural domes. But now they had found each other. Two outcasts in a colony full of people and creatures who fit perfectly into their proper places. Lily touched her pocket where she had stored the wrapper from her sandwich. She could still feel the ghost of his rough snout against her palm. Tomorrow she would bring more food. Tomorrow she would learn why he was alone. Tomorrow she would figure out how to help him. For the first time in months, Lily felt like she had something important to do. Someone who needed her. As she climbed the stairs to her family's small apartment, she was already planning what supplies she could gather without her parents noticing. Behind the agricultural domes, a small pale dragon with silver eyes curled up in the spot where a human girl had sat. Her scent lingered there, mixed with the smell of food and something he had almost forgotten existed. Kindness. He closed his eyes and, for the first time in his short, painful life, he felt something other than fear. It was small and fragile, barely there at all, but it was real, it was hope. 3 weeks had changed everything and nothing at all. Lily still went to school where nobody picked her for team games. She still went home to an empty apartment until her parents finished their shifts. But now she had a secret, and that secret made the lonely hours feel less heavy. The pale dragon waited for her every afternoon behind the agricultural domes. Lily had named him Frost in her head, though she had never said it out loud. Names felt too important to give without permission. But the name fit him perfectly, from his winter-white scales to the way he moved so quietly through the shadows. She had stolen bandages from the school medical office, taking just a few at a time so nobody would notice. She had learned to wrap his injuries with gentle hands while he held very still, trusting her not to hurt him. The burns were healing slowly, turning from angry red to pale pink beneath his scales. The cuts had closed, leaving thin white lines behind. But the worst injuries were the ones Lily couldn't see or bandage. The ones that lived behind his silver eyes. Frost had started to show her things. Not with words, because he was too young to speak any language she knew, but with movements and sounds and the way he pressed his scarred snout against different parts of the colony when they walked together in hidden places. He showed her the Draknir nesting grounds where other dragon children played together in the sun, breathing small puffs of fire and learning to fly. He showed her the marks on his body and pointed to those same children. They had done this to him. His own kind. Lily had watched from hiding as a group of adolescent Draknir found Frost drinking from a water collection tank 2 days ago. She had seen them surround him, heard their clicking laughter. One of them had said something in the Draknir language that made the others laugh harder. Then they had started breathing small flames at Frost, not enough to kill, but enough to hurt. Enough to remind him that he didn't belong. She hadn't thought. She had just run forward, putting herself between Frost and the larger dragons. They had towered over her, each one twice her size, with scales that gleamed red and gold in the afternoon light. Beautiful scales. Normal scales. Not pale and wrong like Frost's. Leave him alone, she had shouted, her voice shaking but loud. The adolescent Draknir had stared at her. One of them had tilted his massive head, confused. Human child, he had rumbled in broken English. This not your concern. The pale mistake not worthy of protection. He's not a mistake, Lily had said. Her hands had clenched into fists even though she knew she couldn't fight them. And he's my friend. The word had felt right the moment she said it. Friend. That's what Frost was. That's what they were to each other. The Draknir teenagers had looked at each other. Then without another word they had left. Not because Lily had frightened them, but because her defense of the defective hatchling confused them so much they didn't know what to do. Humans were strange creatures who formed bonds with almost anyone. Everyone knew that. But defending abandoned refuse? That was new. After they left, Frost had done something he had never done before. He had pressed his whole body against Lily's side and made a sound deep in his chest. A rumbling, purring sound that vibrated through both of them. She had wrapped her arms around his neck, feeling the too fast beat of his heart gradually slow to something calmer. I won't let them hurt you, she had whispered into his scales. I promise. Now, sitting in their usual spot behind the domes, Lily watched Frost try to use his damaged wings. He flapped them carefully, testing their strength. The right one moved smoothly, but the left one still dragged. Whatever injury he had suffered there went deeper than her bandages could fix. He tried anyway. He always tried. Lily had learned that about him. Despite everything that had been done to him, Despite every reason to give up, Frost kept trying. Trying to fly. Trying to be strong. Trying to survive in a world that had decided he shouldn't exist. She had learned more about Draknir culture from the colony's information networks, reading articles on her school tablet, when she should have been doing homework. The pale scales meant something bad. Draknir called it winter-touched, and they believed it was a curse. Dragons born with white or silver scales were considered defective, their bloodlines tainted. Most colonies abandoned them as eggs, leaving them to die in the cold. Frost had been left to die too. But he hadn't died. He had survived somehow, probably eating scraps and hiding from everyone until the day Lily found him. She didn't know how long he had been alone before that. Weeks, months? However long it was, it had been too long. Her school tablet buzzed in her backpack. A message from her mother asking where she was. Lily sent back a quick lie about staying late for a study group. Her mother wouldn't check too carefully. She was too tired these days to notice much of anything. Frost stopped trying to fly and came to sit beside her. His head reached her shoulder now. He had grown in the past 3 weeks, filling out from the skeletal creature she had first found. Good food and safety had given him strength, but he was still too small for his age, according to the information Lily had read. Abandoned hatchlings often were. Their growth was stunted by trauma and starvation. She pulled out the extra sandwich she had saved from lunch. Frost's eyes brightened and he made a happy chirping sound. She smiled and unwrapped it carefully, giving him half and keeping half for herself. They ate together in comfortable silence, the way friends do when words aren't necessary. A maintenance drone buzzed overhead, its sensors sweeping the area. Frost tensed, ready to hide, but Lily put a hand on his neck. "It's okay," she said. "It's not looking for us." The drone passed by without stopping. But the close call reminded Lily that their secret couldn't last forever. Eventually, someone would discover Frost. Eventually, someone would ask questions about why a human child was spending all her time with an abandoned Draknir hatchling. She didn't know what would happen then, but she knew she wouldn't let them take him away. She wouldn't let them hurt him anymore. Whatever it took, whatever rules she had to break, Lily would protect her friend. Frost leaned against her, that purring sound vibrating through his chest again. She rested her head against his scales and closed her eyes. The colony stretched out around them, full of people and creatures living their normal lives. None of them knew about the small pale dragon and the lonely human girl who had found each other in the forgotten corners of their world. None of them knew that something important was happening here. Something that would change everything, though neither Lily nor Frost understood that yet. They only knew that they weren't alone anymore, that after so much loneliness and pain they had each other, and for now that was enough. Frost's body slammed into the ground so hard that Lily felt it in her chest. She ran to him, her feet pounding against the metal floor of the abandoned observation pod she had turned into their secret home. 3 months had passed since she first found him, and he had grown strong enough to attempt real flight, but his damaged wing betrayed him every time. "Are you okay?" She dropped to her knees beside him, checking for new injuries. His silver eyes were squeezed shut in pain, and a thin whine escaped his throat. She had heard that sound before. It was the same sound he made when the memories of his torment became too much, when he woke from nightmares of fire and laughter and being completely alone. Lily wrapped her arms around his neck and held on tight. Slowly, his breathing calmed. The whine faded. He opened his eyes and looked at her with such sadness that she felt tears burning in her own eyes. "I know you want to fly," she whispered. "I know it hurts that you can't, but you're still amazing, Frost. Wing or no wing, you're the bravest person I know." She had started calling him by the name weeks ago. He seemed to understand it was his, responding with happy chirps whenever she said it. He had started making sounds back at her too, different chirps and rumbles that she was learning to interpret. Not quite language, but close. Close enough. Frost made a low rumbling sound and curled himself around her. She was small compared to him now. He had grown to the size of a large dog, though he should have been even bigger. The observation pod was barely large enough for both of them anymore. Lily had filled it with blankets stolen from the colony's donation center and cushions from her own room that her parents hadn't noticed missing. She had even managed to smuggle in a small heater for the cold nights. Those cold nights were when their bond felt strongest, when Frost pressed close to her for warmth and she buried her face in his scales. When she told him about her deepest fears and he listened with complete attention. When he showed her, through gestures and sounds, the terrible things he had experienced before she found him. A buzzing sound interrupted the moment. Lily's school tablet, left by the entrance, was receiving a message. She reluctantly pulled away from Frost and checked it. Her teacher, Ms. Rodriguez, wanted to know why Lily's grades had dropped so dramatically. There would be a meeting with her parents if things didn't improve. Lily deleted the message. She would deal with it later. Right now, Frost needed her more than school did. Outside the observation pod, the colony was celebrating something. Music drifted through the air and colored lights flashed across the buildings. Lily had forgotten what day it was. Some kind of unity festival where all the different species showed off their cultures. She had avoided these events before, feeling uncomfortable in the crowds. But now she felt curious. Want to see something? She asked Frost. He tilted his head, interested. She grabbed one of the larger blankets and draped it over him, creating a makeshift disguise. Then she led him through the maintenance tunnels to a hidden vantage point, where they could watch the festival without being seen. The central plaza was packed with people and aliens of every kind. Humans danced with feathered avix traders. The insectoid chitin displayed elaborate light patterns on their shells. And there, in a place of honor, were the Dracnir, adult dragons with beautiful scales that gleamed in the festival lights. Their hatchlings played at their feet, breathing small flames in patterns that delighted the watching crowd. Frost pressed against the wall, watching. Lily heard him make a sound she had never heard before. A soft, broken sound. She followed his gaze and understood. A human child, maybe 5 years old, had wandered up to one of the large adult Dracnir. Instead of showing fear, the child reached out with chubby hands. The dragon lowered its massive head and gently touched the child's hands with its snout. The child giggled. The crowd murmured with approval. The dragon's eyes crinkled in what Lily had learned was a Dracnir smile. Kindness, gentleness, acceptance. Everything Frost had been denied by his own kind. Hey. Lily touched his scarred wing carefully. Look at me. Frost turned his silver eyes to her and she saw the question there. Why had that child received gentleness when he had received only cruelty? What had he done to deserve abandonment while others received love? It's not fair, Lily said quietly. None of what happened to you is fair. You didn't do anything wrong. You were born different and they were too scared or too stupid to see how special that makes you. She pulled off the scarf she wore, the one her mother had given her last birthday. It was her favorite possession, soft blue fabric that smelled like home. She tied it carefully around Frost's neck, making a collar of sorts. This is a promise, she said. I will never abandon you. I will never hurt you. No matter what anyone says, no matter what rules they have about winter-touched dragons, you are my friend, my family, and I will fight for you with everything I have. Frost stared at the scarf, then at her. Then he did something that made Lily's heart swell so much it hurt. He pressed his forehead against hers and made that deep purring sound. But this time it was different. This time it sounded almost like words, like he was trying to tell her the same thing she had just told him. I will never abandon you either. They stayed like that for a long time, foreheads pressed together, while the festival continued below, two outcasts making promises in the shadows, two beings from different worlds who had found each other when they both needed it most. Eventually they returned to the observation pod. Lily settled into the nest of blankets with Frost curled around her protectively. She was exhausted from the emotional weight of the day, but she felt peaceful too. Tomorrow would bring new challenges. Her parents would eventually notice how much time she spent away from home. The school would demand answers about her failing grades. Someone would discover their hiding place. But tonight, none of that mattered. Tonight she had Frost and he had her, and the blue scarf around his neck was a symbol of their unbreakable bond. As she drifted towards sleep, Lily thought about the child at the festival touching the dragon's snout, about the gentleness in that adult dragon's eyes. Maybe one day Frost would be treated like that too. Maybe one day the Dracnir would realize they had been wrong about winter-touched dragons. Maybe one day the whole colony would see what Lily saw when she looked at Frost. Not a defective mistake. Not something to be abandoned or tormented, but someone brave and special and worthy of love. Frost's breathing deepened into sleep. His silver scales caught the dim light filtering through the observation pod's windows, making him look like he was made of starlight. Lily smiled and closed her eyes. Tomorrow she would figure out how to make the world see what she saw. Tomorrow she would find a way to protect him from those who wanted to hurt him. Tomorrow, but tonight they were safe. They were together. They were home. Security Officer James Chen stood at the entrance to the observation pod, with his arms crossed and a disappointed expression that made Lily want to disappear into the floor. Frost pressed against her side, trembling. Neither of them had heard the officer approach. Neither of them had been ready for this moment. "So this is where you've been hiding," Officer Chen said. His voice wasn't angry, just tired. "Lily Mercer, your parents have been worried sick. And this." He gestured at Frost. "This is going to cause problems you can't imagine." The walk to the administrative building felt like being led to an execution. Frost had to be left outside in a secure holding area. Lily could hear him making distressed sounds through the walls as she was taken into a conference room where her parents already sat waiting. Her mother's face was red from crying. Her father looked older than he had that morning, new lines carved deep around his eyes. Between them sat Administrator David Park, the man who made final decisions for the entire colony. Lily's stomach felt like it was full of ice water. "Do you understand how serious this is?" Administrator Park began. His voice was calm, controlled. "That somehow made it worse. That creature is abandoned property according to Draknir law. Interfering with their cultural practices regarding defective hatchlings could damage our diplomatic relations." "He's not property," Lily said. Her voice came out smaller than she wanted. "He's alive. He's a person. That's not for you to decide." Administrator Park pulled up a screen showing Frost's medical scans. "We'll transport him to the Wilderness Preserve. It's a humane solution. He'll have space to live out his natural life away from the colony. Away from her, he meant. Alone again? Left to survive or die without anyone who cared? No." The word burst out of Lily before she could stop it. "You can't, please. He'll die out there alone." "He needs Lily," her mother's voice cracked. "Sweetheart, you can't keep a dragon like a pet. This isn't healthy. You've been lying to us for months, stealing supplies, failing your classes. This has to end." "I'm sorry I lied," Lily said, tears streaming down her face now. "But I'm not sorry I saved him. Someone had to. Everyone else just let him suffer. Everyone else decided he wasn't worth caring about because his scales are the wrong color." The room fell silent. Administrator Park studied her with an expression she couldn't read. Her father put his head in his hands. Her mother reached across the table like she wanted to touch Lily but didn't know if she was allowed. Then her mother said something that changed everything. "I had a friend once, an alien friend that my parents said I couldn't keep." Ann Mercer's voice was soft but steady. "I was about your age. She was a chitin worker who got injured and couldn't return to her hive. Everyone said she was useless, that I should let her go. But I didn't. I took care of her until she healed enough to find a new purpose. She ended up becoming the colony's head of agriculture. She saved hundreds of lives with her knowledge of crop optimization." Administrator Park's eyebrows rose. Lily's father looked at his wife like he was seeing her for the first time. Anne turned to the administrator. "What if we compromise? Let someone from the Draknir community monitor the situation. If they approve, if they see value in this bond, then Lily can continue. If not, we'll respect their decision." It wasn't perfect. It wasn't even close to what Lily wanted. But it was something. A chance. 2 days later, Lily sat in another conference room, this time with Frost beside her. They had allowed him inside for the meeting, though guards stood by the doors looking nervous. Across from them sat an ancient Draknir female named Skyris. Her scales were deep gold, fading to white with age. Her eyes had seen more years than Lily could imagine. "So you are the human child who insists on protecting the pale mistake," Skyris said in heavily accented English. Her voice sounded like rocks grinding together. "He's not a mistake." Lily's hands shook, but she kept her voice steady. "His name is Frost. He's smart and brave and kind. The only mistake was how everyone treated him." Skyris made a rumbling sound. "You understand nothing of our ways, child. The winter touched are cursed. They bring disaster to any who harbor them. This is known." "Why?" Lily demanded. "Because his scales are different? Because he doesn't look like you think he should? That's not a reason to hurt someone. That's not a reason to throw away a baby and let him starve. You dare lecture me on Draknir culture?" Skyris's voice rose, making Frost flinch. But Lily stood her ground. "I dare tell the truth. Frost never did anything to anyone. He was born and you all decided he was worthless before he could even open his eyes. How is that fair?" How is that right? Skyris stared at her for a long moment. Then the old dragon did something unexpected. She laughed. It was a harsh sound, but genuine. Fire burns in you, small human. You protect the defenseless with nothing but your words and your fragile body. This is very human, yes. Skyris turned her ancient eyes to Frost. And you, pale one. You have survived when you should have died. Perhaps there is strength in you after all. She was quiet for so long that Lily thought the meeting was over. Then Skyris spoke again, softer this time. I will tell you a story that few remember. Many generations ago, winter-touched dragons were not abandoned. They were honored. They possessed abilities that others did not. They could sense things others could not see, feel things others could not touch. They were our seers, our guides through danger. Lily's breath caught. What happened? One went mad, Skyris said heavily. His abilities grew too strong, too wild. He destroyed a colony ship before he could be stopped. Hundreds died. After that, fear replaced honor. We began abandoning the winter-touched rather than training them. Better to have none than to risk another tragedy. She looked at Frost again, really looked at him. His wings are too small. His growth is stunted, but his eyes. See how they shine silver? That is the mark of potential. His abilities may manifest or they may remain dormant forever. No one can know. I don't care about abilities, Lily said. I care about him. Yes, Skyris said. I see that very well. I will allow this bond to continue. But I will watch. If the Pale One shows signs of dangerous power, decisions will need to be made. Do you understand? Lily nodded even though the words scared her. She understood that this wasn't over. That Frost would always be watched, always be suspected. But it was better than losing him. Better than knowing he was alone in the wilderness waiting to die. That night Frost couldn't settle in their observation pod. He paced and made anxious sounds. Finally, he pressed his forehead against Lily's and something happened that had never happened before. She saw images, not with her eyes but in her mind. She saw herself from Frost's perspective, saw how she looked to him, saw the moment she had first offered him food, saw every kindness she had ever shown him, burned into his memory like precious treasures. Then the images changed. She saw herself old, adult, still beside him. She saw him full-grown, his scales shining silver in sunlight, flying with wings that somehow worked. She saw a future where they stayed together. The vision faded. Lily gasped, her head spinning. Frost watched her with those silver eyes, anxious. Did you just show me your thoughts? She whispered. Frost made a chirping sound that meant yes. Can you show me more? He touched his forehead to hers again. This time she saw darkness and fire and pain. She saw his memories of being abandoned, of being burned by other hatchlings, of wanting to die because the pain was too much and no one cared. Then she saw light. Saw herself appearing in his darkest moment like a star breaking through storm clouds. Saw how her simple act of sharing food had been the single most important moment of his existence. Tears streamed down Lily's face. I'm glad I found you, she said. I'm glad I didn't walk away. Frost pulled back and made that deep purring sound. Then he did something new. He formed a single word in his mind and pushed it to hers. Friend. Yes, Lily whispered, hugging him tight. Friends. Always. Outside, the colony continued its normal life. But inside the observation pod, something extraordinary had happened. A human and a dragon had formed a bond that went beyond words, beyond species, beyond any rules or laws. They had touched minds and hearts, and nothing would ever break that connection. Not fear. Not prejudice. Not even the dangerous power that might one day awaken in Frost's blood. They were bound now. Forever. Frost wouldn't stop pacing, back and forth across the observation pod, his claws clicking against metal, his tail lashing. Lily had never seen him this agitated. She reached out to touch him and nearly pulled back from the heat radiating off his scales. He was burning up from the inside. What's wrong? She asked, but she already knew he couldn't explain in words. Whatever was happening to him went beyond their simple shared images. For 3 days, something had been building. The colony's sensors had picked up strange readings from beneath the ground. Small tremors that the geologists said were nothing to worry about, but Frost had felt them first. He had dragged Lily to the edge of the colony 2 days ago, scratching at the ground and making distressed sounds. She had seen cracks forming in the earth, thin lines spreading like spider webs. Nobody believed her when she reported it. A child and a defective dragon weren't credible sources of geological information. Now Frost collapsed in the middle of the pod, his whole body shaking. Lily dropped beside him, terrified. His silver eyes rolled back, showing only white. His breath came in sharp gasps. She screamed for help, but they were alone in this forgotten corner of the colony. Nobody could hear her. Then Frost's mind slammed into hers with the force of an avalanche. Images flooded her consciousness. Not gentle shared thoughts like before, but violent, overwhelming visions that made her cry out. She saw the ground opening up, saw buildings falling into massive holes, saw people and aliens screaming as the colony collapsed into hidden caverns below. She saw death and destruction on a scale her mind could barely process. And she saw when it would happen, felt it in Frost's bones like he was part of the Earth itself. 2 days. They had 2 days before the colony fell. The vision released her and she fell forward, gasping. Frost was making a high keening sound, his body still convulsing. Lily scrambled for her tablet and called the emergency line with shaking fingers. "Please," she sobbed when someone answered. "Something's wrong with Frost. We need help. And the colony is in danger. The ground is going to collapse. Please, you have to believe me." Within minutes, emergency personnel arrived along with Skyris. The old dragon took one look at Frost and made a sound of recognition that was almost like grief. "The awakening," she said softly. "His abilities are manifesting. The Pale One has become a true seer." "What does that mean?" Lily held Frost's head in her lap, trying to comfort him even though he seemed lost in whatever was happening inside his mind. "It means he is feeling the Earth as if it were his own body," Skyris explained. "Every crack, every shift, every weakness. It is a gift that comes with terrible pain. Most winter-touched who awaken do not survive it. The sensations are too much for a young mind to bear." Lily's heart seized with fear. "How do we help him?" "You cannot. He must endure it." Skyris touched Frost with one ancient claw. "But you can anchor him. Keep him connected to this reality, so he does not lose himself completely in the visions. Talk to him. Let him feel your presence." So Lily talked. She told Frost about the day they met, about every moment they had shared since then, about her promises that she had kept and would keep forever. She talked until her voice went hoarse, and through it all Frost shook and keened and burned with fever. Finally, after hours that felt like days, his eyes focused again. He looked at Lily and pushed a single image into her mind. The colony. The collapse. 2 days, I know, she whispered. I saw it too. We have to warn them. But warning people and making them believe were two different things. Administrator Park listened to Lily's frantic explanation with polite skepticism. The colony's chief geologist dismissed it entirely. Our sensors show minor seismic activity, the geologist said. Nothing unusual for this region. There's no evidence of large-scale cavern systems beneath us. But Frost can feel it, Lily insisted. He can sense things your machines can't detect. Please at least prepare an evacuation plan. Skyris spoke up then, her ancient voice carrying weight that Lily's could not. The Winter-Touched have predicted disasters before. In the old times, we listened to them. Many lives were saved. I suggest we do not ignore this warning. Administrator Park frowned. An evacuation would cause panic. It would disrupt essential colony functions. I need more than a dragon's visions to justify that. Then a small tremor shook the building. Nothing major, just enough to rattle windows and make everyone grab their chairs for balance. When it stopped, Administrator Park's face had gone pale. How accurate are these predictions? He asked Skyris. When a seer awakens fully, their visions are precise, the old dragon said. If the Pale One says 2 days, then we have 2 days. Fine. Administrator Park activated his communications panel. I'm ordering emergency evacuation protocols to be prepared. But I want verification. Can your dragon show us exactly where the collapse will occur? Lily looked at Frost. He was exhausted, barely able to stand. But he nodded slowly and pushed an image to her mind. She grabbed a stylus and started drawing on a digital map, tracing the lines that Frost showed her, the danger zones, the safe areas, the exact places where the ground would give way. The geologist studied her markings and went even more pale than the administrator. If this is accurate, a third of the colony sits on top of the largest cavern, including the water processing plant and the primary power grid. Then we evacuate, Administrator Park said firmly, starting immediately. The next 36 hours were chaos. People packed emergency supplies, Transport ships were called in from nearby colonies. Different species argued about priority and resources. Some colonists refused to leave, insisting this was all an overreaction to a defective dragon's hallucinations. Through it all, Frost worked. Despite his pain, despite his exhaustion, he used his newfound abilities to map every weak point in the ground. Lily translated his visions while Skyris verified them. Together they created evacuation routes that avoided the worst danger zones. But then disaster struck early. A human boy named Billy, who always played near the agricultural domes, had been exploring an abandoned building when it collapsed partially from a sudden tremor. He was trapped, and the building sat directly in the red zone that Frost had marked as most dangerous. "We can't send rescue teams there," the emergency coordinator said. "According to the dragon's predictions, that area will be the first to go." "We'd be sending people to their deaths." "Then I'll go," Lily said. She was already running before anyone could stop her. She found the building quickly. Frost was right behind her, moving despite Skyris's shouted commands to stop. They squeezed through a gap in the collapsed wall, and Frost immediately closed his eyes, using his strange new senses to locate the boy. He made a chirping sound and moved toward a pile of rubble. Lily followed, climbing over broken concrete and twisted metal. They found Billy wedged under a fallen beam, conscious but terrified. His leg was trapped. "We're going to get you out," Lily promised. She tried to lift the beam, but it was too heavy. Frost pushed his head under it and lifted with all his strength. His damaged wing scraped against debris, tearing open old wounds, but he held the beam up long enough for Lily to pull Billy free. The ground shuddered beneath them. Frost made an urgent sound. They had to move now. Lily grabbed Billy and ran, Frost herding them forward. Behind them, the building groaned. Ahead, rescue workers shouted and waved them on. The ground shook harder. Frost stumbled, his strength finally giving out. "Come on!" Lily screamed. She couldn't carry both Billy and help Frost. She made a split-second decision and shoved Billy toward the rescue workers. Then she ran back for Frost. She grabbed the blue scarf still tied around his neck and pulled with everything she had. Frost struggled to his feet. Together they lurched toward safety. The ground beneath the building split with a sound like the world breaking. They dove through the rescue perimeter just as the entire structure fell into a massive sinkhole that opened up behind them. They made it. Barely. Billy was safe. The rescue workers stared at Frost with new respect. And as Lily held her shaking dragon friend, she felt something change in the air around them. People were looking at Frost differently now. Not as a defective mistake, but as the creature who had risked everything to save a child he didn't even know. 30 minutes, Skyris said quietly, checking her instruments. "The main collapse will happen in 30 minutes. Everyone must reach the safe zone." The final evacuation became a desperate race, but thanks to Frost's precise mapping, everyone knew exactly where to go and where to avoid. Species who had barely tolerated each other worked together, helping the young and elderly to safety. Lily stayed with Frost, both of them exhausted but unable to rest until everyone was safe. Finally, with minutes to spare, the last transport lifted off from the danger zone. Lily and Frost stood with Skyris on a hill overlooking the colony, along with hundreds of others who had chosen to watch from safety. The ground shook and shook, and then exactly when Frost had predicted, it opened up. Massive sinkholes appeared across the colony. Buildings that had stood for decades fell into darkness. The water processing plant where Lily's parents worked disappeared into the earth. The Draknir nesting grounds collapsed. A full third of Terravale colony simply ceased to exist, swallowed by caverns that nobody had known existed. But no one died, because a small pale dragon with silver eyes had felt the disaster coming and refused to stay silent, because a little girl had believed in him when no one else would, because together they had saved everyone. Frost didn't wake up for 3 days. He lay curled in the emergency shelter that had become their temporary home, his breathing shallow, his silver scales dull. Lily refused to leave his side. She slept pressed against him, woke when he twitched and talked to him constantly even though he couldn't hear her. The doctor said his mind had been pushed beyond its limits. Using his abilities so intensely while still in the awakening phase had nearly killed him. Now his body was forcing him to rest, to heal, to recover from saving an entire colony. Lily held his head in her lap and cried. She had promised to protect him, but she had let him hurt himself saving others. She had let him push too far. On the third night, his eyes finally opened. Those silver eyes that had first looked at her with such fear and pain now held something different. Awareness, power, understanding. "Frost," she whispered. "You're awake." He made a weak chirping sound and pushed a simple image to her mind. Her face smiling. He wanted her to be happy, not sad. "I thought I lost you," she said. "Don't ever scare me like that again." Frost struggled to his feet. His legs shook but held. He stretched his wings and Lily gasped. The damaged one, the one that had never healed properly, was different. Still scarred, still smaller than the other, but somehow stronger. Changed by whatever transformation had happened during his awakening. He looked at her and pushed a feeling rather than an image. The need to try something, to test his new strength. "Okay," Lily said, though fear squeezed her heart. "But be careful." They went outside the shelter into the open area where other evacuees were gathered. The sun was rising over the hills where the new colony would be built, far from the destroyed original site. People and aliens of every kind were working together, constructing temporary housing, setting up supply lines, caring for the injured. Frost spread his wings. The scarred one trembled but didn't collapse. He crouched low, gathering his strength, and then pushed off the ground. He flew. Not far, not high, but he flew. His wings beat an uneven rhythm, the damaged one struggling to match the healthy one, but it was real flight, something doctors had said would never be possible for him. He circled once above Lily's head before landing, stumbling slightly but staying on his feet. Lily laughed and cried at the same time. She ran to him and threw her arms around his neck. He made that deep purring sound that meant happiness, contentment, home. "You did it," she whispered. "You really did it." A crowd had gathered to watch. At the front stood Skyris, her ancient eyes bright with something that might have been tears. Beside her was Administrator Park and Lily's parents and dozens of others who had watched Frost transform from abandoned hatchling to the creature who saved their lives. Skyris approached slowly. She lowered her massive head until she was eye level with Frost, showing a level of respect that made the gathered Draknir gasp. In their culture, elders never lowered themselves to the young. But Skyris was showing that Frost was no longer a shameful secret to be hidden. She spoke in the Draknir language, her voice carrying across the gathered crowd. Then she switched to English so the humans could understand. "I was wrong," she said simply. "We were all wrong. The winter-touched are not cursed. They are blessed with gifts we feared instead of honored. This pale one has proven what we should have known all along. Different does not mean broken. Rare does not mean worthless." She turned to address the gathered Draknir specifically. "I call for an end to the old law. No more will we abandon the winter-touched. No more will we punish hatchlings for the color of their scales. Frost has shown us a better way. The humans have shown us a better way," the adult Draknir murmured among themselves. Some looked ashamed. Others looked relieved, as if they had been waiting for someone to challenge the cruel tradition. One by one they bowed their heads in agreement. Administrator Park stepped forward next. "The colony owes its survival to Frost and to Lily Mercer. Without their courage, without their bond, hundreds would have died. I'm proposing a new position in our colony structure. Interspecies Bond Coordinator, someone who helps facilitate friendships and partnerships between different species, who recognizes that our differences make us stronger, not weaker." He looked at Lily with a small smile. "The position will be created for when you're old enough to take it if you want it. But for now, I want everyone to understand that what you and Frost have is precious. It's proof that compassion matters more than rules. That kindness is stronger than prejudice." Lily's parents came forward and hugged her. Her mother whispered, "I'm proud of you." So proud. Over the next weeks, as the new colony took shape, everything changed. Other Draknir came forward, admitting they had hidden pale-scaled hatchlings instead of abandoning them. Skyris personally collected each one, bringing them to Frost as if he were already a teacher despite his young age. He was patient with them, showing them they were not alone, that their abilities were gifts. Human children who had never paid attention to Lily before now wanted to hear stories about her friendship with Frost. Teachers asked her to speak to classes about cross-species understanding. She went from invisible to celebrated, and while it was overwhelming, she had Frost by her side through all of it. But the best moment came on an ordinary afternoon 2 months after the evacuation. Lily was helping sort supplies when she saw a small alien child, one of the insectoid chitin, approach Frost nervously. The child's parents watched from a distance, uncertain. Frost lowered his head, the same gesture that large Draknir had shown the human child at the festival months ago. The Chitin child reached out with delicate limbs and touched Frost's snout. Frost made a gentle rumbling sound. The child's fear melted away, replaced by wonder. More children approached. Human Draknir Avix Chitin. They gathered around Frost, asking questions in multiple languages. He couldn't answer with words, but he didn't need to. His presence, his patience, his gentleness spoke louder than any language. Lily watched from a distance, her heart so full it ached. This was what she had dreamed of that night at the festival. Frost being treated with the kindness he deserved, being seen for what he truly was. Not defective, not cursed, but special and good and worthy of love. Skyris came to stand beside her. You gave him more than your friendship, young human. You gave him hope when he had lost all reason to hope. You gave him a future when everyone else had decided he had none. That is a gift beyond measure. He gave me the same thing, Lily said quietly. We saved each other. That evening, Lily and Frost sat on their favorite hill overlooking the new colony site. Construction lights twinkled like stars as buildings rose from the ground. In the distance, they could hear laughter and music as different species celebrated another successful day of rebuilding. Frost's scales had grown brighter, no longer dull with illness and stress. His silver coloring gleamed in the fading sunlight. The blue scarf was still tied around his neck, faded and torn but precious. He would never take it off. He spread his wings, testing their strength. The scarred one would never be perfect, but it was enough. He could fly now. Not as high or as far as other dragons, but he could fly. That was its own kind of miracle. Lily leaned against his side, feeling his heartbeat through his scales. Steady and strong, alive, home. Do you remember that first day? She asked. When I found you behind the agricultural domes. You were so scared, so hurt. I almost walked away. I almost decided it wasn't my problem. Frost pushed an image to her mind. Her face on that first day, looking down at him with concern instead of disgust. The moment that had changed both their lives forever. I'm glad I didn't walk away, Lily said. I'm glad I held out my hand. Frost made that deep purring sound and pushed another feeling to her mind. Gratitude so profound it brought tears to her eyes. Love that transcended species and language. A bond that would last their entire lives. Below them, a group of young Draknir flew past, their scales glinting in the dying light. Among them flew two with pale scales, winter-touched dragons who no longer had to hide in shame. They saw Frost and called out greetings in their clicking language. He called back, his voice confident. A year ago, Frost had been dying in the shadows, abandoned and alone. He had lost all hope that life could be anything but pain. Then a small human girl with a kind heart had held out her hand and changed everything. Now he had a home. He had a purpose. He had a future where he could help others the way Lily had helped him. He had proven that being different was not a curse but a gift, that the outcasts and the abandoned could become the heroes who saved everyone. And most importantly, he had a friend, a true friend who had seen him at his worst and stayed anyway, who had fought for him when he couldn't fight for himself, who had believed in him when no one else would. Lily closed her eyes, feeling peaceful. Tomorrow would bring new challenges. There would be more children to teach about acceptance, more prejudices to overcome, more work to build a colony where everyone was valued regardless of how they looked or where they came from. But tonight, sitting on this hill with her best friend in the whole universe, everything was perfect. I love you, Frost, she whispered. He pressed his forehead to hers and pushed the simplest, truest thought he had ever formed. Love you too. Always. Forever. The stars came out above them. Two outcasts who had found each other in their darkest moments sat together and watched the colony they had saved build itself into something new, something better, something that understood that hope, friendship, and love were stronger than any prejudice. They had changed their world, one act of kindness at a time, one held-out hand that had refused to pull away, and their story was only beginning.